Hello, this is Rachel from the Nerdy Homeschooler, and today I'm really excited to share with you our morning time lineup. Now, I know that a lot of families use morning time as group family subjects. Sometimes families are doing their history lessons or science lessons. This is usually a time for group family readings, and that is how we are using it. However, we're not doing like our core history lessons or core science lessons at this time. This has been Bible, this includes Spanish, and it includes some special studies or some special books that I just wanted to read. So it's not so much our core curriculum at this time, although it is a very essential part of our routine. So I'm going to walk you through the resources I'm using and share what morning time looks for us right now. Now, just to give some context, I am a second generation homeschooler with 3 young boys. I have a second grader, a kindergartner, and a 1-year-old this year. So morning time is happening during breakfast. I wake up before my kids, I eat my breakfast before my kids, and then while they eat their breakfast, I am reading stories. And because I do have a 1-year-old who maybe is not so much listening to the stories, although his patience for sitting in his high chair has increased, there can be interruptions or there can be times when it's cut short because he's just done with eating his breakfast and being in his high chair. But this is our routine. So even if I have to stop, get him out, then we come back to our routine. We have some resources that we are using every day, and then I have a loop of resources that are being used once or twice a week. So first I'm going to share the resources that we're using every day. For Bible, we are currently reading the Beginner's Bible, but we're reading the Spanish version. This is a bilingual copy, and it's a little bit of a heavily used bilingual copy, which this is a very simple Bible. And they could be reading a more complex Bible passages at this point. They definitely could. However, I'm trying to read it to them in Spanish. We're trying to get some more Spanish input and some of the biblical vocabulary. This is a great level of Spanish. We don't have super long paragraphs or super complicated sentences, but there are still words that I'm having to stop and explain because this isn't so much everyday vocabulary, this is Bible vocabulary. So giving them a little bit of a base in Bible vocabulary in Spanish through reading this with them. And then besides that, we are also reading through The Wisdom of God by Lithos Kids right now. And I am an affiliate with Lithos Kids, so I will leave my 10% off discount code down in the description below. Next up, we also have a catechism song that we are singing. These are the Songs for Saplings catechism songs in Spanish, and I just found the lyrics on their website and just put them in a simple printable on Canva. Anyone could do that with the lyrics for anything that they want to learn. And we are just cycling through a handful of different songs, singing the same song for a week or two, and then I kind of get bored of the same song and we'll move on to another one, but we will cycle back to that song. That tends to be my style with Spanish songs, just to get some variety, but then also go back and keep becoming more and more familiar with those songs. Also, every day I've been reading poems from Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. We went through this a couple years ago, maybe when my oldest was in pre-K, and I just figured it was time to go back and read all these great animal poems again. This is a really fun book. I just read a 2-page spread every day. I'm not paying attention to the dates or the months. We are currently reading the April poems right now. We don't have seasons where we live anyways, so the seasons or the animals don't really correlate with our lives, but they're great little poems and quite a nice variety too. There's some funny ones, there's some more serious ones, and take a second to talk about them or point out something cool about the poems as well. But the illustrations in this are great. I will try to link to all these resources down below. Then we've also added in this new edition I just showed in my haul, the first volume of Collier's Junior Classics. It'll probably take us a good little while to get through this. At the beginning of the book, there's a bunch of Mother Goose nursery rhymes, and I have read the Mother Goose nursery rhymes to my boys before, but it has also been a couple years. It was probably when my oldest was in pre-K, preschool. So it is hilarious because now they're at an age where I can read them a nursery rhyme and they're like, wait, what? What did that say? Why did it say that? I feel like it's a fun new experience reading them nursery rhymes now that they're a little bit older and they can think about them a little bit more and be like, yeah, that's really weird. I am one of the people that finds nursery rhymes weird, but I don't necessarily see weird as a bad thing. I find it very entertaining. One nursery rhyme I read them this week, which I had never read before. It's a very long one, and it's about a frog and a rat who go to visit a mouse. They ask the mouse for some beer, and they have a nice little visit and sing some songs. And in the end of the poem, the mouse and the rat and the frog all get eaten by various predators. And so I am just cracking up over this poem, and my boys' eyes are about as wide as saucers. And they are also seeing the oddity of this poem. So we find those pretty enjoyable and a little unexpected. There are also some short stories in this volume. So as we go through, we'll be reading different poems and short stories, but I am enjoying sharing this with them right now. And then we are also doing oral Spanish lessons. Over the past year, we did homeschool languages, Spanish 1 and then Spanish 2 during our morning time, which I love those resources because they're really working on oral and conversational Spanish. And my boys have Spanish where they're working on literacy in their individual subjects, but oral Spanish, conversational Spanish is a weak point for them. They have good comprehension. They don't tend to speak it as much. So I knew I wanted to continue doing just oral practice, getting their mouths comfortable with speaking in sentences. And so I decided to give Speaking Spanish with Miss Mason a try. And so we have been doing that, working on one series for a week. And I will probably do a video specifically on this resource in the future for just a general look at it. You have a little series of sentences, and they're tied to actions that you can be miming those actions, or you could be using some props and doing those actions. And so throughout the week, you can be having your students repeat the sentences after you. You can be having them act out those sentences while they are saying it so that you're getting that physical element and describing the action that they are doing, and just getting them to practice. Now, because my boys do have Spanish background already, I'm not stopping with just these sentences. I'm encouraging them, okay, you said this little series of sentences, what's next? What do you want to say next? Tell me something else related to this. So in the first week, it was, I open the book, I close the book. No. It was I take the book, I open the book, I close the book. So they were adding on, I take the book, I open the book, I close the book, I throw the book in the ocean, was what they said. I put the book on my head. I put the book under the table. I put the book in the trash can. Remember, these are little boys, so they have a little boy sense of humor. But I'm fine with that when it is applied to speaking in Spanish. So we have some of that silliness going on. I put the book on the baby's head, and we'll go and we'll put the book on the baby's head. And then the next series involved pencils and pencil sharpeners and a backpack. So it's kind of been involving different props. The one we're going to do this week is going to be going over all of morning routine, kind of describing the morning routine. I comb my hair, I get dressed, I eat my breakfast, and doing that as well. So we are just using this for getting our mouths in the habit of speaking complete sentences in Spanish. So those are what we do every day of the 5-day school week. Then I have a few different subjects that are just happening once or twice in a week. So one day a week, I'm trying to read a math picture book. And most of my math picture book collection has come from Kate Snow's recommendations because we use Math with Confidence. I'm currently using 2 levels. And the book that I'm reading each week just kind of depends on, do I have the book for the 3rd grade level this week, or do I own the book for the 1st grade level? Or which one is maybe a more challenging subject, or one that we just want to read more, because I don't have all the books. I just have some of the books. This week we read Do You Know What Time It Is? Because my older son is working on a unit on elapsed time and doing calculations with time, and this was the recommended book. It's a great, actually very in-depth picture book. So that was our math picture book of the week, and we just do that one day a week. Also one day a week, we are doing world geography, and our country that we're studying right now is Madagascar. So on this day of the week, I get down our little blow-up globe and have my youngest son point out Madagascar on the map, which is kind of easy to recognize because it's this giant island. And then we'll just read one 2-page spread from the On Mission issue of Madagascar. Now, this is a bit dense, I would say, and the content can be a bit dense, especially toward my kindergartner. But actually, I've been impressed these past 3 weeks on how excited and how interested and engaged he has been with our Madagascar lessons. Like, he's finding this very interesting. It's a really nice magazine design. This comes from Gentle and Classical Press. I am an affiliate with them, and I love a lot of their resources digital. I'm overseas, so I print many of their resources at home, but this is one that I do recommend buying the physical version, if at all possible, just because it's not gonna look this nice if you print it at home. It's really more of a magazine style, and I really like these. We did 3 issues of On Mission last year, and I expect we might do around the same this year. The next resource is one we're using 2 mornings a week, and this one is also from Gentle and Classical, and that is Gentle and Classical Agriculture. You can tell by my very fancy homemade cover. And with Gentle and Classical Agriculture, which I do have a full video on this program, it is a similar setup to the Gentle and Classical Nature programs, which we did use in past years, but I would say the content is a little bit more advanced. So we are using this 2 times a week, and you have a memory statement that you are using for a unit. And you can decide how long you want to spend on a unit. We're gonna spend roughly 2 weeks on a unit, maybe a little more on some units if I have more books available related to that topic. But so far we spent 2 weeks on the first unit, planning to spend 2 weeks on this unit. This unit is talking about food systems. I printed these double-sided to save paper. So this will be unit 4, and this is talking about fall crops. And then you have a couple different books that are recommended, and there's optional books that you can read as well. So we have The Farm That Feeds Us, and there are scheduled readings within this book that are just like 2 or 3 pages. The student notebook itself also has a little farm story that is going on. So this one was talking about food systems. What's a food system? And there's a little diagram here that you can complete on a model food system for corn, a poem that you're learning. So we've been reciting the poem every day. So we actually recite the poem, and we practice our memory statement every day during the 2-week unit, but we're only doing a reading for agricultural science 2 times a week. So for that, it will be something like this book or the farm story, or if I have one of the other books on hand, then we will read that. So for this unit, actually this coming week, we're going to read Right This Very Minute, a Table to Farm book about food and farming. So this is a book that goes into that topic of food systems and the journey of food from the farm to the table. So our morning time is pretty Gentle and Classical heavy this year. They have some really nice resources that are working very well with the different ages of my boys. Then on the 5th day of the week, we are working through Medieval Melodies to Musical Theater from Music Comes Alive. Now, Music Comes Alive did send me this product. They're a pretty new company offering music study courses, and this is designed for a once-a-week music lesson through music history as well as music fundamentals. And they give you guidance as you're listening to different songs, what you're listening for, some discussion points with your kids, which I really appreciate because I am not really a music person. So we've done the first 3 lessons of this so far, which were on Hildegard von Bingen, a medieval composer from maybe about 1,000 years ago now. So it was an introduction to someone I knew nothing about. We've been able to listen to recordings of we've been listening to recordings of the music that she wrote being performed by vocal artists, and a choir was the most recent one. It was a composition designed for a whole choir to sing. These lessons also include different elements of music, such as a music fundamentals focus. Each month you get a different music fundamentals focus. This month was on dynamics, so forte, piano, the different cymbals, which this is great because my oldest son is just being introduced to playing piano right now. So to get these cymbals for soft and loud introduced also in our music lessons that are part of morning time just gives great reinforcement and a great extra layer. So I really appreciate that. So to sum up very quick, we have 1 day with a math picture book, We have one day with world geography using On Mission, and we're studying Madagascar. Then we have 2 days studying agricultural science, and then we have one day doing our music lesson. So that's the loop portion. I also have to admit that a lot of times during morning time is when my boys will want to pull random picture books off of our shelves and ask me to read those to them. And I'll often use that as motivation. I'll say, sure, I'll put the books you guys picked out at the bottom of the stack. And if morning time has gone very well, if you guys have been paying attention and you're still paying attention, by the time we get to the end of our lessons, you're still seated and, generally being calm at the table, then yeah, we can read the extra books you picked out. So I'll just share a few of those just to show that they might differ a little bit from what I'm picking out. One is El Chiquero, which must be called something like the pigsty in English, because this is translated from the English. This one is about a boy whose room is so messy that pigs come to live in the room with him. And then he likes it at first, but eventually it's too annoying to live with pigs, so he cleans up his room and then the pigs move out because it's too clean for them. So this has been one that one of my sons has been asking for. And then another one of my sons has been asking for another pig-related book. Si le haces una fiesta a una cerdita, if you give a pig a party. Also one that comes from the English, but these are both pretty short and light reads, so easy to add on to the end of the stack. And it's great when they're asking for books that they just want just for the fun of it. Then also one of the picture books that my son requested this week was Columbus by Demi, and this is not a super short and light read. And the day he requested this, I just ended up reading it to just him, which is my oldest son, after I gotten his little brother out of the high chair so that he could escape and be free. And the 5-year-old also ran away because this is significantly longer of a book, but he just really felt a need to refresh his knowledge of this story this particular week. So you never can tell what they might be adding to the stack as well. All right, now I want to hear from you. What is in your morning time stack or your gathering time routine this fall? What are you really loving? What book titles should I know more about? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you next time for more nerdy homeschool videos. Bye!